Between 1919 and 1933, the Weimar Republic, commonly referred to as interwar Germany, was basically a sexual free-for-all in terms of sexual liberation and divine decadence. Nothing was more in your face than Berlin's 20s explosion. So, what was going on? You've certainly seen it immortalized in films like Cabaret, but these real-life accounts of Weimar decadence make Lisa's dance moves look downright tame sexual liberation and bold progressive art. Movements like expressionist cinema Dada and Bauhaus flourished in post-war Germany. However, the stringent conditions of the Treaty of Versailles, which were imposed on Germany at the end of World War I, led to a host of social and political issues. According to Mel Gordon, the sex-fueled cultural renaissance arose from the deep anxiety created by World War I. It wasn't just intimacy in the manner that, example, the French would have enjoyed a good Mueller album. Rather, intimacy was always mixed with something else, like as danger, power, or death. But while it was good, everything was happening in the Weimar Republic. A gender-bending orgy of modern life and intimacy in Weimar Germany was everywhere. So take a look at these real-life accounts of what was going down in the Weimar Republic. You'll never look at Germans the same way again. This is History Made Easy. Kindly subscribe. The cabaret was a free-for-all androgynous pensex that embraced debauchery and freedom. Cabarets were the center of Weimar Berlin's cultural nightlife, a whirlwind of booze, drugs, sex, fashion, and performance art. Seminal playwright Bertolt Brecht once took to the stage of a Berlin cabaret to perform Ballad of the Dead Soldier, a pitch-black satirical ballad in which the German army dug up the corpses of soldiers and sent them back to the front. Aside from cabarets, Berlin had hundreds of clubs that catered to straight men, gay men, lesbians, male crossdressers, female crossdressers, and the occasional non-binary pansexual bonanza. The Smart Set publication describes beauty nights as a bizarre combination of an opera night and a stroll to a nudie bar. Many other cabarets were only nightclubs or erotic pageants referred to as beauty nights, where seedy customers sat with opera glasses. Even though she was barely 15 feet away, Marlene Dietrich built a legendary backstage reputation. Marlene Dietrich earns 2 spots on this list, which makes sense given how author Diana McLellanonce described her as perhaps the busiest and most passionate bisexual in theatrical Berlin. Of course, many Americans recognize the German actress from classic films such as Shanghai Express, Touch of Evil, The Devil is a Woman, and Blonde Venus. However, before arriving in Hollywood, Dietrich was a controversial atomic sex person on the German stage and screen. Dietrich's backstage antics in Berlin's wild Weimar theater scene are especially intriguing. She was notorious for her insatiable sexual hunger, which presented itself in a variety of bizarre ways. In his autobiography, noted German actor Klaus Kinski detailed one such backstage fling. Marlene tore down Edith's fantasy backstage in a Berlin theater and brought Edith to climax with just her mouth. Anita Berber was a depraved priestess who ate deadly rose petals. When a book is titled The 7 Addictions and 5 Professions of Anita Berber, Weimar Berlin's Priestess of Depravity, you know it's about as licentious as it gets. Anita Berber, a professional dancer, was an expensive hedonist who abused drugs and alcohol. She liked coke, morphine, and opium, but her favorite drug was extremely hazardous. According to legend, she would eat rose petals steeped in a mixture of chloroform and ether. Berber was best renowned for her sexual conquests, rather than her proclivity for swallowing fatal substances for the sake of partying. She was famous for breaking sexual and gender boundaries in androgynous burlesque acts, according to rumors. Berber's libidinous bisexuality, like her drug usage, was openly displayed, with a complete disregard for public vs private domains. Take for instance the following story. As the evening's petty flirtations devolved into suggestive whispers and drunken groping, Anita stood up and performed a passionate tango with Mia, a stunning strawberry blonde who was the partner of a notorious lesbian named Ellen. While the audience gathered around the inebriated dancers, Anita slowly tapped the girl's melons until the giddy blonde nearly collapsed in an orgasmic surrender. The air crackled with tension and sexual temptation as Ellen went to assist her shaky lover and ordered Anita to sit down. Perhaps the best way to characterize Berber is to quote a contemporary who called her the most remarkable spirit I've ever met. Even geese were not safe to the strange underworld of human sexuality. At the time, practically any kink or desire could be fulfilled in Berlin, and it didn't always have to involve a human partner. In his memoir The Europeans, Italian journalist Luigi Barzini relates one of the Weimar Republic's most odd sex acts, which involved a goose. I witnessed pimps give anything to anybody, little boys, little girls, strong young men, libidinous ladies, and animals. The story went round that if you cut the neck of a male goose at precisely the proper ecstatic moment, it would offer you the most delicious frisson of all, as it would allow you to enjoy sodomy, bestiality, homosexuality. necrophilia and sadism all at once. Gastronomy is also involved, as the goose can be eaten afterward. In LGBT societies, fashion was used to assert sexuality and gender. If you've ever seen a German expressionist film, you'll know that Weimar fashion was a big deal. It was Gothic, ostentatious, deco, sexually macabre, extravagant, severe, and daring. Imagine German designers appropriating French aesthetic, and you're in the ballpark. However, fashion served both form and function in the Weimar Republic, and in many cases, its goal was to make strong progressive statements about sexuality and gender. In Berlin's cabarets, men and women used dress to convey non-binary attitudes toward gender, displaying a fluidity that was remarkably revolutionary for the early 20th century. For many in the Weimar Republic, appropriating non-gender traditional dress was a social statement. Within the growing female homosexual subculture in Weimar, Germany, as Katie Sutton writes in The Masculine Woman, masculine clothing took on meanings that resisted mainstream encodings and trends. Robert Beachy, author of Gay Berlin, spoke at length on interwar Berlin's openness and sexually liberated gay culture. During an interview with NPR about singer Claire Waldorf Beachy, she revealed that she was a lesbian. She lived with her partner, she was very open, she had a gay-lesbian salon, and while not all of her friends were gay or lesbian, she interacted with many other entertainers. But her sexuality was never hidden, and I believe that most people understood that she truly loved women and was with a woman, so that was very much a part of her identity. Gender fluidity was common. During the Weimar Republic, gender bending was very popular. Cross-dressing and transvestism were common activities both within and outside of Lukia communities, and they frequently went hand in hand with exploring non-binary gender and sexuality in a safe environment. Stefan Zweig, an Austrian writer who was critical of all this sexual freedom portrayed in Botched Balls. As a result, Berlin was transformed into the world's Babel. Germans brought all of their vehemence and love of system-made-up lads with artificial waistlines promenaded along the Kurfürst standom to perversion. Even ancient Rome had not known orgies like the Berlin transvestite balls, where hundreds of men dressed as women and women dressed as men danced under the watchful eyes of the police. In the midst of the overall collapse of values, a type of lunacy gripped precisely those middle-class circles that had before been unshakable in their order. Young ladies boasted about their perversion. Being suspected of virginity at the age of 16 would have been considered a disgrace. Prostitution was deregulated, widespread, and politicized in every school in Berlin. According to Laurie Marhofer of Syracuse University's book Degeneration, Sexual Freedom and the Politics of the Weimar Republic, there was a campaign in interwar Germany to decriminalize prostitution, which resulted in a new law in 1927. Depending on your budget, you could have prostitutes sent to you in a limo with champagne, or you could pick up a partner on the street. However, as Bowdoin College's Jill Suzanne Smith explained, prostitution in the Weimar Republic was more than just an economic reinforcement of patriarchal beliefs in which strong, heterosexual males sought out women for purchase.